directors, showrunners, and executive producers, Matt and Ross. We also have casting director, Carmen Kuba. Department head, Sarah Hinsdale. Set designer, Craig Henry. Stunt coordinator, Hero Hunter. Visual effects supervisor, Michael Mayer, Jr. Do the high fives. How you doing? Everybody. I wanted to start by talking about tonight, this combination of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 and Stranger Things. Obviously, there are a lot of Freddy influences, allusions. You've got Robert Englund leading your show. What were some of the inspirations from Freddy Krueger, particularly this movie, that you guys drew from?
I mean, obviously Nightmare on Elm Street in general is a huge influence. Freddy Krueger is a huge influence on Vecna. The idea of him going into minds, being able to manipulate, not knowing, what's real, what isn't. And then this one, so we talk about Nightmare on Elm Street a ton. We always do when we work at a show. And then this season in particular, we were talking about Dream Warriors a lot. I mean, a lot of that factors into the later part of the show with the dream hopping. The idea of, I think that was where the idea initially of Eleven being able to exist within this, within Max's mind, to join her there in order to defeat him within the mind. That's where a lot of that came from, and Max being able to control her world,
And on top of that, I love the cross-cutting between, we've got stuff going on in the real world and we've got stuff on in the dream world, which is something that we did in our finale as well. It's just so cool to see in this movie.
Right, real world affecting dream world, all that.
It's really cool.
Carmen, can you talk about bringing Robert Englund into the show and how that came about, how you chose the part for him? Maybe you guys can also address, was that written with him in mind, or how that?
It's all Matt's idea. I'm kidding. That's a joke. How did it come to mind? Well, first of all, it's very interesting to hear them talk about that so specifically, because that's not information they share with me, which is helpful, I think, because I can have fresh eyes on it and sort of have my own ideas, and they can reject a lot of them. Robert Englund was someone who I looked at actually for the role of the mayor in season 3, and he auditioned for it. And I look for people that might excite the brothers, and I just sneak them in. I don't say hey, look out for Robert Englund in this group of people I'm sending you. And so sometimes they totally ignore. They don't ignore them, but they don't, text me back super excited about seeing them, and then sometimes they get excited. And for the mayor part, Carrie Elways just got their attention, and Robert sort of went back into the mix, and then in season 4 it just seemed like a good opportunity, and we had him audition again, which was kind of amazing that he would do that. And they fell in love, but they didn't have him in mind, and they were surprised to see him, is what I remember.
Oh no, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
But especially because we don't talk about what we're the movies we're talking about, and Nightmare being such a big influence, and Freddy in particular being such an inspiration for this. And then, I don't know, it's one of those ideas that seems like I should have come up with, especially as you had already introduced us to the idea of using him for the mayor.
I think actually we all forgot that we saw him for season 3.
Did we? Embarrassing. But in
There's a long time in between.
Anyway, so we're just going through these auditions for Victor, and then suddenly there's Robert Englund, he's lying in a bathtub.
He has on his clothes though.
Yeah, he has his clothes.
Yes.
he's lying in a bathtub and like delivering the monologue that's in the show and like acting the hell out of it. Like he's an amazing actor, and most people we just know him as Freddie, but he was delivering this long monologue so beautifully, and the fact that it just felt like such a beautiful homage, and like Jamie, who playing Vecna, had talked about Robert all the time, so it just felt like fate, or as close to fate as casting can get.
It's a huge cast and a lot of characters. But you have 3 really breakout newcomers this season, and you mentioned one of them, obviously, Jamie Camp-Bauer, who plays Valerie. How many of you here have seen the entirety of season 4? Like by applause. Is everybody who hasn't? Anybody who hasn't seen the whole thing? Maybe they should be. We won't. Okay, so
Episode 7 is going to be very confusing for them.
So I won't give away. That's enough people that I don't want to give away too much. You've got Jamie Campbell-Bauer, you've got Joseph Quinn. I was like, wow, I could play this Dokken song at the end of, and Eduardo Franco, who's Argon. Talk about the process of getting those 3 into the show and into those parts.
Jamie, for that role, we obviously needed. Oh, am I spoiling?
I don't know if we want to say, but
I think we have to a little bit.
We needed him to play 2 roles, and one of the things that was required of one of the roles was for the actor to be at least 5'10" and be pretty thin because he was going to be in prosthetics. So that was for, and also you have to understand that as the show has gotten more popular, we have to be very, very secretive about what the story points are, what the characters are. So really, I just went out on a search for someone who is basically the breakdown set, 5'10", very thin. You can imagine how many people I got, a ton. And then we used Primal Fear and Hellraiser scenes. Because again, we had to hide it. So what I found that I initially responded to about his audition was that he was able to use both of those scenes and somehow imbue the sort of spirit and energy of Stranger Things, which felt shocking actually, but that was what they responded to.
I was just going to say a lot of actors could do the Edward Norton monologue pretty well.
Yep.
That wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
But no one could do Pinhead. Because it's very difficult to say, with no makeup on or anything, to say, I'll tear your soul apart and not seem laughable.
Yeah.
It was a lot of really tough auditions to watch.
We watched the Primal Fear audition and we were like, wow, this actor's incredible. And then we'd be like, oh, we better watch the. And then at a certain point, we realized, why are we watching this long Primal Fear before we watched this really short Pinhead scene?
Yeah.
Pinhead's
So we
a man of
started
few
with
words, yeah.
Pinhead.
Yes.
And then if they could do Pinhead, then we'd watch the Primal
But
Fear.
not really. Jamie was really the only one where I just remember getting chills when he said those lines, which again are tough lines, and he is just immediately you could see in his eyes and what he's able to do with his voice as a musician. It was
Right.
He was honestly the only. There was really no one else.
There wasn't anyone else.
No.
But the good news about casting with these guys is that they really do pay a lot of attention, and the things that they pick, the fake scenes, they're always very revelatory, and there sort of are only one, or I don't even recall ever having a choice of 2. It's usually like just this one person that can do it.
Sometimes you don't like our scenes.
Sometimes I don't, but in the end,
Yeah.
they work out.
Sometimes you want to pick another scene.
How about Eduardo Franco as Argyle? He's like obviously his primary role in the show was comic relief, and maybe we will sort of crack up. What was it?
That was a hard part to cast. Do you guys want to explain why?
Well, it's just I remember a lot of Spicoli imitations,
Yes.
which was, we had referenced Spicoli for the role, but ultimately it just started to feel like an imitation Sean Penn in a worser version of it.
And
so,
again, we needed them to, we need these people to feel like our version
Yes.
of these very familiar types of characters and energy, so.
So he was, I think, Eduardo. Yeah, he was the one who was able to make us all laugh, but bring his own take on the stoner character. That felt like Stranger Things.
I did have to do that scene a million times, I remember. Because actually, part of this season, we got to cast the old-fashioned way in person, and then once the pandemic started, it was all on tape. And I actually feel like that was the character, that was the last character I did in person until that. So it's me reading opposite them all doing this.
And how about Joseph Quinn? People adore him. There's tributes to his air guitar.
Do you want to? Joseph came through super traditionally in the sense that we just put out, I don't remember what the breakdown said that we were looking for. Do you guys? What information we gave.
It was. What I know is it was the cafeteria scene, and his
he did
introductory
real
scene.
scene.
It was
He
a
did
real
real
yeah,
scene.
because he had big scenes in the pilot, not the pilot, the first episode.
Yeah.
And that cafeteria scene was really hard. It was really hard for actors to do and come away with you liking that character at all. And that was the challenge. And that was this question of like, okay, do we? And we felt like the right actor would be able to sell that scene. And then Joe destroyed it.
Killed it.
Yeah, and like it was no question. And then it was just a question of is his age? Like we started to worry about his age. And actually, I called Sarah. I sent you a photo of him. I was like, is a wig gonna fix this situation?
And then you guys changed it.
And yeah, you were like, it's fine. Yeah, I'm gonna give him a big, what did you? I don't know.
A big one.
The
A wig. You're gonna give him
a
a
big wig.
big wig. And he's gonna look plenty young. And then we wrote some dialogue saying like, hey, I failed
He
to find.
failed
I
3
did see
times.
that.
Also, it's
Yeah.
helpful in the casting with these guys is that they really do tailor, and that's also what makes it feel like my casting is better than it probably would be otherwise. They tailor it to the actor that they meet.
Well, I'd like to talk about the hair. There's a lot of hair in this season and this era in particular. And then you have somebody like Levin who doesn't have a lot of hair. Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. What were some of your favorite styles in this season? Was any one of them?
I mean, my favorite style is definitely the 11 wig after we shave it off. I think that was the biggest challenge anybody have ever given me.
Because she didn't cut her hair, is that right?
That is correct.
So you had to make her look like a buzz cut.
Yes. So I've always heard that it's impossible to do a wig that is that short. Normally you do it in special effect makeup, and you do it with something called a punched cap wig, but they take about 3-4 hours to put on. It's a long process, and Amelia was still a child. She was still just 17 when we were shooting, so that would have taken up half of her shooting day. So I was like, I think maybe there's a way we can just do it with the wig, with nothing underneath it, so we can get it done in 30 minutes. And I started calling around to some different, to my wig maker, asking him if there was a way to tie the knot in a way so they don't start opening up. Normally when you cut something that short, that's the problem with going that short. The knots will open because there's no gravity to keep the hair down. So he went in and tied the knots hair by hair to make it stronger. And then we spent 10 hours on hand cutting it little piece by piece, which was very tricky. The trickiest part though was to make it look exactly like her hair did in season 1. Because we've already seen her with shaved hair. So it's not enough to just come up. All the other wigs, I come up with I can use my imagination and we have, we can choose whatever. but with that, it had to be exactly the same. And that is always very difficult, to copy something and to hide that much hair underneath it to make it all disappear. And you really have nowhere to hide, right? The wig is so translucent that you can see right through it. And we didn't have time to put a ball cap on her, so we sewed little pieces of silk in certain areas. So you feel like you can see her skin when the lights are hitting her from the front and the sides.
I was only going to say, like, it was, I didn't think it was possible.
You
No,
gave me a
it
B
wasn't-
minus, I think.
I did not give you a B minus. No, but it was originally, that was a concept. We liked the idea of like, oh, she gets her hair shaved again, and there was just like, we realized it was just not, we can't have Millie shave her head again. She's a movie star. It's like, it's not going to happen. But so I was like, we gave up on the idea. And it was like Sarah who came to, and this is what's so great with everybody here, we've been working on the show from the beginning. So it was like, everybody's very comfortable. So they come up and was like, I think I can do it with a wig. And I was like, what? Like a buzz cut? I was like, listen, I mean, it can't hurt to, and she gave her all the spiel about that spiel.
It's called a pitch.
Yeah, I was like, okay,
There might have been a little begging involved.
well, I said, it doesn't hurt to try. But I was like, we got to do it, it's got to pass a camera test. I think I'm going to be super honest about it. Like, it's going to take a ton of time. And I'm going to say no. It doesn't, and then it just was incredible. And I remember the test, I was like blown away. And then the test we did, we had other kids who were shaved, the other numbers. So we had her walking around with them with it, because I was like, it needs to hold up with the real shaved kids, because that is the thing that made it extra difficult. It was like, okay, she's going to be up against kids with real buzz cuts. So, and then when we saw that it held up on camera, and we showed it to Netflix, it was like, okay, this is what, because it was a huge decision. It was like, okay, and then we committed, and it just made the season, took it to another level. It was huge.
Thank you.
It's such a vast show. There's so much going on, and each of you has so much responsibility. And I want to go to visual effects. And again, I don't know, were there visual effects involved in helping with the magic trick of hiding Millie's hair?
Zero.
Zero.
No, it's good. We did help out here and there where we saw, a little bit of lace or whatever. But I just have to say that my mom watched this season, and I'm like, yeah, I did that visual effect. She was like, yeah, but Millie didn't cut her hair. That was the thing that she was blown away. It was like visually accomplished. I thought, it was like, it's crazy actually just seeing her on set with that wig on. I mean, it's unbelievable.
What aspects of your work did you brag to your mom about?
Well, all of it, usually all of it, but I think the thing that was one of the hardest things to pull off this season was definitely making Young 11 happen. That was probably the biggest challenge, and I think still, there were some comments not long ago where people were still thinking that we used found footage of her and stuff here and there, which was like, we didn't. It was completely made up and fake, and
You hear that after having done so much work to create Young 11. Are you like, yes, I
Yeah.
did it, or are you like, what the?
No, absolutely. You want it to be sort of like an invisible thing, and that's what we work so hard to do. And what's amazing is, the company that does it are just pros, and it would just be, after version and version, it was really hard to get it to look right. We finally got something that the guys settled on and we worked with. But even still, just little inconsistencies, like it's amazing if you just have a little bit of an eye shifted out of place or anything, but we're so well trained at looking at faces and picking out what's unreal. And that was like the major thing with that. Like we had so many shots with moving cameras and stuff, and we had to use a projection technique and a mix of 3D and replace her face completely on top of a stand-in.
Hero, what elements of the stunt work on this would you brag to Michael's mom about?
Every
that we did. It was,
What was the toughest stunt?
every set was challenging. There was not one that wasn't challenging, and I mean, the bros brought out the best in me and challenged me to my fullest, and that's what made me work so hard with everything that we did. One of my favorites is the Demogorgon pit fight with in the prison. It was they came in and wanted to do a oneer, and we had to kill all these prisoners, and we didn't have a guy that was actually going to be doing the killing. So it was me. I basically made 101 ways to kill a prisoner by a Demogorgon, and gave them the reel and said, you know, they went at it and looked at what things they liked and what they didn't like, and we sort of picked out what was going to work out for that sequence. And that was probably one of my favorites to put together. It was so challenging to be able to have all these guys being attacked and killed by this Demogorgon that wasn't there. We used a guy in a green suit, and then also we did it without them, and sometimes it worked with the guy, and then most of the time it didn't. You had to use your work to put it in there, and like, you know, I mean, the guy that hit the top of the stage and the whole set fell apart by accident was like an accident that was a good accident that happened.
I still remember you running up this. That was sweet.
So that was probably my favorite one. The Rainbow Room itself was one of the most difficult sets for me to sort of work in stunt-wise. It was a beautiful set, and we did a lot of wire work in that set, and to do all the stuff that we had to do in that room was quite difficult and challenging for my team. And but it all came together. And I mean, these guys challenge me all the time, and that's what I love about Stranger Things is like just they pull me up to my best potential that I can do, and I got to try to be innovative every season and try to bring out the new stuff and not bring anything old, because nothing can get by these guys at all. So.
I'd also like to add that both Hero and Michael did amazing second unit directing work on this season.
It's a wonderful cast and crew, and just like the collaboration from everybody, even working with Sarah and all my stunt guys, having to go through her every day. Having to like deal with all the stunt guys that come in and making them look like who they need to look like, and it's a fun show to be a part of for sure.
So Craig, all of these visuals we're talking about, without the sound, it wouldn't land. So
That's right.
It's interesting that the sound of the mic.
Yeah, it's great actually hearing everybody's stories, because I'm in what's called post-production, and everyone here is in production, making. So everything that they've done and worked hard, and when it's getting cut together, and the brothers are working with Dean Zimmerman, our picture editor, I myself and my crew started sort of putting sound to everything. And this season, as every season has sort of grown, as everyone here I think can agree, sonically everything has to sort of follow and grow. So if the scenes and the action is bigger, if a sting needs to be bigger or a whoosh, or because we're very into transitional sound effects and stuff like that, so it's a very big signature of Stranger Things is how we get from scene to scene, and if a door closes extra louder than what a normal sort of close would sound like in real life. So we're always doing what's called strangerizing things and making it feel like the Stranger Things world. And we've sort of done that since season 1, but season 4 was just, you have something like the clock, for instance, right? And how do you make that clock, which is omnipresent, it's there from the very first episode, and how do you get that in someone's skull? How do you get it in someone's brain? And that's what this season was about. It was psychological sound a lot. It was a lot of taking regular sounds and somehow just making them just get into your brain. It's not necessarily making it the scariest sound, but making it evoke sort of an emotion.
I'd like to hear more about that, because you mentioned the clock and the sound of the clock. I have watched episodes for a couple of weeks or months now, and I can still hear that bong and that tick. Just that bendiness.
The bendiness is something that, look, the clock, it's written into the script, and Matt and Ross are fantastic, specifically with sound. When it's in a script and it's written there and it's actually committed it lets the sound sort of live and breathe on its own. It's easier to
I
put a
think
sound
though, in the
together.
script, to be clear, it says tick-tock.
TikTok.
Not gong. Ding dong. Right.
So
like,
I had to,
I mean,
you know,
yeah,
we
you
use capital
letters.
pressure.
Yeah.
Like pressure in season 4.
Italicized.
I had to say the slowdown, the gong that slows down. Actually, I did when Hopper jumps down in the caves in season 2 episode. It was one of Sean's episodes. Did he usually do 3 and 4? Each season?
Yeah.
So
One
and 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Right, when Hopper, right at the
Yeah.
end, when he jumps down
Yeah.
into the
Oh,
cave.
it's twist.
There's actually a gong that slows down in that scene. And it's not the clock, but that idea of strangerizing things has been kicking around in my head for a while. So when we got to this season with the tick-tock that's on the script and how do we make it scary, or scarier and more strangerized, the idea of it just being this sort of like slowing down of time, essentially, is kind of how I thought about it, right? So you have the 3 elements. You have the element of the tick-tock, and then I used a cello. If you take like a cello and you mute the strings and you take a bow and you sort of thrum against the strings, that groany sound you hear as the pendulum's going left and right, that's actually a cello sound that gave the clock a character, right? And then you have the gong, which is a regular gong, and then I pitched it down, and then I took another version and slowed it down, which is called pitch envelope, which basically slows the sound down. And then rhythmically on 4, you have this space where you can kind of get it to slow, and then it starts over again, just like time. It's always marching forward.
There are other things that just are designed to get into the subconscious of the viewer. What are some examples that you can think of?
Oh, I mean, there's stuff in the Upside Down, you know, that is just like, well, this season the Upside Down was more fun because we got to sort of sneak in some demo dogs from season 2. We got to sneak in, I did like baby cries, but they're really, really pitched down and lowered and then reversed, and like there's all sort of subtext and stuff like that. It's all additive, right? Like it's all about. The interesting thing about this show is that sound was supposed to be illusionary, sonics, right? You're supposed to just go into that world. But this show allows us to sort of show off a little bit with the sound, and sort of the guys are really in, like when we do spawning sessions, we basically talk in sound effects, so like, you know, and like making sound effects noises and stuff while we're actually going through the episodes to talk about different things. So there's all sorts of little things from season 1 all the way through of little, you know, that you wouldn't notice.
I love those little clicks you have whenever.
Right, which was an accident. Like I was looking for something else, and it's my voice. It just does this weird,
That was your
ticking
voice?
sound. I don't know how I did it. I couldn't do it now.
Are these in the show?
Well, it's in what Ross picked up on this sound that I used with 11 in the opening scene when she turns around, and then we started to put it everywhere else. And then I have to say, Matt and Ross are really, really great about letting sound. You're revisiting the sound altogether. And if you think about a song, you think about people writing music and stuff. What's the most popular thing? Don't bore us, get to the chorus. You're always going. The chorus is some of the most popular things. They do that with sound all the time. So when we can pick up on something like the little ticks and use it with 11, and there's so many opportunities in this season where she's reflecting in the van, for instance. She turns around and she has a certain look on her face, or she's in her room on her own, and it sort of evokes this emotion.
It's sort of it sort of cues you to go. When she's taking you back to the massacre and the trauma of her past, so we just sort of would sneak it in. And again, it's something that I don't think you necessarily, a viewer, certainly in a first viewing, is going to pick up on it, but hopefully subconsciously, it triggers an emotion in the audience.
Do you like what those things are discovered though? When people notice them?
Well, I mean, like the whole idea, the clock was a funny one this season because everyone's like, I heard it in season 1 when, he falls off his bike and it's in there. And, it's like you play a record backwards, you play a Led Zeppelin song backwards and you hear something, So for us, it's like, did you really hear that or didn't you hear that?
But yeah, when Craig, like people think that ticking is all that clock was set up in
clock is
season
established.
one.
And I'm like,
And Craig's
I'm like,
asked
dude,
about it,
I-
and he goes, no. And I say, Craig, you say
you gotta
yes.
play into it, right? You're in Hollywood.
If someone's asking,
You're in, of course,
yeah,
say
when
yes.
someone asks, that's exactly what I said.
He's doing it again though, he's
I know.
I'm doing it right. I'm Canadian. I'm being too honest.
We've had this conversation with Craig. I can't believe it.
You're screwing it up again. People like honesty.
Do you want your Emmy or not?
I think it's getting late, so the clock is ticking, and we will we'll wrap it up here. But I want to thank the panelists for being here with us tonight.